am I.
Good morning, everyone. We're missing one of our teams today. Mark John couldn't make it, unfortunately, and very grateful to Stephen, who kind of flew in at late notice, and without doubt has the most expensive airline ticket here. There's not a hope anybody's going to match him. He could have been probably in New York for the price that he paid to get here.
And they say airlines don't do dynamic pricing, but I can testify that is not the case.
Anyway, it's great to be here, and this is my 5th Inter-Celtic Forum. And Charles, the one thing I'd say is, how are you going to top this venue? You're really going to have your work cut out there. So it's amazing to be in the Isle of Man, and for anybody it's their first time at one of the Inter-Celtic events, I'd say at the breaks, get around and try and network and meet people. Charles has this incredible knack of getting really excellent people in the room, and they're always, very kind of, people who always want to kind of pay it forward. And as I think one of the speakers said earlier, they'll ask the question, what can I do for you, pretty early in the conversation. Anyway, my name is John O'Loughlin. I suppose to keep the theme going of odd people in odd places, I'm an Irish guy who works for the Welsh Government but is based in Ireland. So we've already had our New Yorker who lives in Brittany and works on Celtic events. I predominantly look after inward investment for Wales. I do a lot in the tech space, especially around Europe, because we've quite a small team. And I do a small bit of export work as well. So great to be here. And Stephen, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm also quite an oddball. I also worked in Wales. I worked in Swansea. I don't know if there's anyone from Wales here or from Swansea. Nobody, no representative. But yeah, so I was. My background is in biotechnology and law, and I work as a technology transfer manager at UCD, mostly in the environmental space, but also in kind of some life sciences and agri-tech. And we deal. I've been fascinated with the talks this morning. The range of them. We deal a lot with AI systems and data sovereignty, which Tomas was talking about. Actually, it was very interesting to me as well. So our job and we're going to talk about corporates and how they interact with the innovation system in Ireland, but I'm talking specifically about UCD, which is a university, one of the large universities in Dublin. University College Dublin has a research income of around 200 million. And obviously our job is to take the research outputs and create either jobs or create companies from the kind of money we get from Europe and from companies as well.
And thanks, Stephen. So obviously a lot of the talk this morning so far has been about AI, and I was listening to a guy speak during the week who gave a stat that really helps put in your mind's eye how quick AI is moving. So if you take the battery in your mobile phone and imagine that this battery is when the big LLM, what's the big LLM that was launched? The first of the big ones, the Microsoft one, the ChatGPT. So if you can envisage that, that's the battery in your phone. And where it has come to from when it was launched to now, if you plugged your phone in tonight, it would last for 40 years. So that's how quick AI is moving. So obviously that's everything in the business environment at the moment, and I imagine that's why corporates tend to engage with universities. So can you tell us a bit why corporates would come to you guys?
For a range of reasons, really. I mean, obviously, in UCD we work with the large kind of software companies, the big tech companies, who do a very complex range of work, and we can talk about that. But we also work with the pharmaceutical sector, and they're mostly doing just manufacturing in Ireland. And we work with med tech, medical device companies, and a lot of agri-tech companies. So that's the kind of range. Why would a company come to us? I mean, I can think of one company, for example, that was in the kind of agri-tech space and needed to digitize its services. And so in UCD, I know they looked around the world, they actually looked in Europe and they looked in the States, and UCD had a kind of top computer science department, top agricultural school. And so they essentially funded a multi-million project with the assistance of Research Ireland to digitize their services, create AI platforms around prediction of weather, managing fertilizer, managing water, and it was a hugely successful. I think it was actually the largest agri-tech university collaboration in the world at the time, and that was because just the range of researchers that we had in UCD, both in terms of computer science and agricultural expertise. So it's that kind of collaborative thing that we're kind of been talking about this morning. That was one of the reasons. That's a very good example. I think also companies can come to the university for kind of to do kind of surveys or to get a handle on kind of social science aspects, but also to add. I think a lot of companies now are actually struggling. The indigenous companies in particular are struggling with the sustainability agenda. So a lot of them come for kind of consultancy and expertise around that. So it's all around transformation, really, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay, I had a very interesting conversation with the head of cyber risk for one of the big American banks last week, and obviously they have to be so far ahead of the puck, with cyber risk. But she said that they have a big fear around kind of end-to-end encryption, and when quantum computing comes on board, effectively all that information has been harvested now. When that comes on board, that could be all unlocked really quickly. So what they've actually partnered with Trinity College, because they just don't have the expertise to do it. So presumably you have plenty of use cases like that. But how do corporates go about partnering with you guys if that's what they want to do?
So I mean, there are actually. Essentially, I don't know if people are familiar with Enterprise Ireland, but they're an organisation in Ireland tasked with growing the indigenous and the SME sector, and we're heavily linked. All the technology transfer offices in the Irish universities are heavily linked with Enterprise Ireland, and many years ago they were quite insightful in that they established a subdivision called Knowledge Transfer Ireland, and they established all these templates and explained IP, intellectual property, explained the nature of the types of agreements, collaboration agreements, consultancy agreements, even studentship agreements. And then they explained the whole kind of how kind of IP would be licensed out to those companies, and gave a series of contract templates to try and make dealing with universities easy. Because of course there's all kinds of issues around, the IP, the intellectual property follows the money. Like if you pay everything for an actual project, you own the IP, right? But if you pay a certain amount, then there's kind of like a scenario where the IP can be licensed to the company, but at a kind of discounted rate. So that's kind of like there's a really, technology transfer was a big deal in the UK for years, and in Ireland even 10, 15 years ago it really hadn't developed much. But it's come along in kind of massive leaps and bounds. And in actual fact, I know for a fact that some of our UK colleagues look at our situation and think, wow, there's actually, there's actually a lot we're doing kind of pretty right in Ireland. We're actually very lucky. There's a lot of investment. Enterprise Ireland have an enormous number of initiatives. I was very interested in the innovation challenge that was being discussed earlier by Chris Riley, because I suppose one of the challenges around technology transfer from a university is that you have a boffin sitting in an office thinking, oh, this is going to be a good idea, right? And it usually isn't. And it may be kind of technology-led, which doesn't really go somewhere. You need something to be customer-led and market-led. So Enterprise Ireland have established a number of these kind of initiatives where a student, and it can be a mature student in their 40s, can join a program for a year. We have one at UCD called FAST IP, which stands for Food and Sustainability Innovation Program. And for a year, they do an enormous amount of immersive discovery, customer discovery, and they see where the pain points are for food companies, and especially around sustainability. And then our job is to hook them up with an actual, once they focus on the market and the problem, then you try and solve, try and solve using technology. So there's a lot of different programs around to kind of to try and grow the indigenous sector through collaborating with universities.
Great. Can we talk a bit about maybe the challenges of engaging with corporates around innovation? I mean, one thing that has strikes me, some of the things that were said today, I mean, I spend a lot of my time trying to effectively develop jobs, and the more I speak to tech companies, the more they say to me, well, there won't be a lot of jobs in this, but there'll be a lot of, we'll make a lot of money, but like the jobs are going to be fewer and fewer. Are there people who are gatekeepers in corporate organizations who are saying, I might be doing myself out of a job here now by engaging with these guys?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack actually in that question. Despite, I mean, I said corporates are involved, big pharma, the big tech, are involved in every aspect really of innovation in Ireland, but it's difficult to license something to a corporate. That's because it's quite often too early. Also, the corporates, many of the corporates in Ireland obviously are foreign multinationals, and so they don't necessarily have the agency to adapt to technology. You know, they would have to, usually obviously we're talking about US companies, they'd have to engage with the US lawyers. So it's actually very, very difficult to license directly to an actual corporate. What we often end up doing is we license to the companies that feed the sector, or create a spin out to actually kind of, that would be an actual kind of client of the corporates. So it is, number one, even though they're involved in our ecosystem, they feed into the ecosystem, they're not necessarily direct recipients of IP. We don't license directly to them. In terms of then gatekeepers, I mean, I think that's the whole issue, full stop, with, in particular with AI. I mean, we've had to, I was very interested in Ken's talk and in Tomas's talk. We've obviously already, I mean, we license AI technologies to companies. I mean, that big agri-tech project I was talking about, that was all AI. But we also obviously use AI for actual workflows. It's completely transformed what we do. It's transformed the patent world, the legal world. We use AI agents to deal with, you know, students and researchers disclose their work and their IPs. We use agents that we've built ourselves to kind of review their projects before we have human eyes on them. So anybody who's not really adapting this stuff is going to be left massively behind. I think, you know, the gatekeeper thing, I think that's more, certainly with corporates, that's more an issue where they are, it's a big ship, and trying to turn it around is very, very, you know, the corporates are not necessarily there to do really innovative stuff in Ireland. You know.
Okay, I was actually recently reading a piece by Steve Blank. I don't know if people are familiar with him. He's an entrepreneurship professor in Stanford, and he kind of made the point that, you know, up until relatively recently, if you bring an MVP to market, that's kind of proof that you can make a high-performing team work. But that's no longer the case with things are moving so quickly. So, like you said, if you're not knee deep in this stuff, you're in trouble. Just to finish up, then, I suppose you're uniquely positioned in that you've been, you know, you've seen what the ecosystem is like in tech transfer in both Swansea and in Wales and in Ireland. So, could you briefly tell us about maybe differences and parallels?
Yeah. So I had a great time at Swansea. It was a fantastic culture. I really enjoyed my time in Wales. I would say it's an amazing place. It's actually a top engineering university. Many people probably wouldn't be aware. I found Charles' comment about Celts not shouting about their achievements. That was very. I found Wales very like that. They were very understated culture and understated people. Whereas in Ireland, we tend to shout too much and we tend to kind of blow our own trumpet too much, which obviously came to a crash in 2010 or 11. So I'd say differences. There wouldn't be as much of a can-do attitude culturally in Wales. You know, I don't know whether that's an agency thing. I was interested in the gentleman from Cornwall talking about that. I found Wales quite similar like that. There was some brilliant people, and they didn't realise how good they were. And but there was also not a lot of money around. You know, the one big thing, and it's been interesting that the Irish talks this morning have been very focused on AI and digital. And there was the industrial world in Wales was very engineering and deep tech and clean tech, you know, hard science, hard engineering. I was shocked when I came back to work in Ireland how digitized everything was. You know, like universities in the UK in general don't actually, there's some niche stuff around digital and AI, but, you know, there's quite a them and us in terms of the industry and universities. But in Ireland, it's very seamless. Like there's a huge amount of technology transfer in digital assets. That was the biggest, and of course that is probably because of our ecosystem for the corporates. We're quite comfortable in that space, you know.
Okay, many thanks indeed, Stephen. Both Stephen and I are around for the rest of the day, so yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. Gurmagat.
Gurmagat.